Mm. Hello, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be pe- interviewing a person that I really find interesting that interests me the most. My math tutorials teacher, Miss Marichelle Basilio. Um I have a set of questions here that I would like to ask you, at least five. First, please introduce yourself to our audience and and explain what exactly you do.
Okay. Hi. So, good morning. My name is Marichelle Basilio. I study Bachelor of Science in Mathematics in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Um, Currently, I am employed as a tutor since I was able to finish my academics during the pandemic. I was not able to find a job easily, and I prefer tutoring because it's more convenient and I only stay at home to avoid going outside. I conduct researches maybe mostly on the new teaching techniques that are done here in the Philippines. Like, for example, the way math is taught in school. Before, we used the traditional method in solving math, the long method in solving. Now, it is mostly Singaporean math, wherein solving math problems is more of visualization. So we use bar models in order to solve math problems. And I use that new technique in order to teach my students now because I need to teach them what's in line to the teachings that they learn in school.
Mm,
That's all.
Thank, thank you. Um, you, you are math major, I guess, but we are not going to be asking you any questions related to math today, but instead I want to know your opinion on the next following questions, and it is about our national language, the Filipino language.
Mhm.
So yeah, about Filipino studies. For for the knowledge of our audiences, why do you think studying the Filipino language is important?
I think the Filipino language is important because that is our main language, and that is the most used language here in the Philippines, of course, because that is our language. We invented that. That Filipino really is a mix of every language that we have here in the Philippines, but mostly from the Tagalog region only. So the term Filipino was used in order to also include the words that we have invented, that we incorporated, like from the Spanish language and then from the Tagalog language. We also include there the English language sometimes. They're in the Filipino language. So it's more of like it's it's what's needed in order for us to communicate better. Because, for example, when you go out, when you go to a sari-sari store, when you go buy in stores, you don't speak to them in English. You speak to them in Filipino. And other Filipinos will better understand you if you use the language Filipino. So I think that's really important. Rather than focusing on English, we should study more Filipino because that's the primary language used here in the Philippines.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, and I bet our Filipino students know that I asked this question because we have a because we have a foreigner student want who may want to know something about Filipinos. So anyways, third question: Are you personally in favor of the removal of the Filipino subject in college? If not, what possible alternatives do you suggest?
I am strongly against the removal of the Filipino subject in college. Al- Rather than an alternative, I would suggest to just bring it back. Because, for example, in my experience, I was required to take Phil 40 subject
Phil-
and also a CAS 1 subject, both of which are in Filipino. And it was really nice for me because I was able to learn more about the Filipino language and also in the CAS 1 about the history of the Philippines here. So removing that is it would really take a toll on the students here in the Philippines because they will not really appreciate where the language Filipino came from. So it's really nice to know how Filipino was formed, also
mm,
what are the aspects or factors that affected our language to be created into such. And removing it, it's like
mm,
removing a cultural it's a cultural tradition maybe, passing down the knowledge of Filipino and removing it is very, very bad for
yes.
our tradition that there.
So fourth question. On to the next question. How would you stress the importance of a national language to a generation who barely even cares to study it, or rather, eh, or rather or rather those who do not really understand the importance of studying the Filipino language.
You can see it in TV shows and movies that are made here in the Philippines. They are all using the Filipino language. Maybe they also include a bit of English language, but mostly it's in Filipino. Aside from that, other creatives and arts that we have here in the Philippines are in Filipino. So if you don't want or if you don't have any interest in learning our national language, then you better move to a different country because if you plan on staying here in the Philippines, then I suggest that you should use the national language which is Filipino. Because if you really want to speak in English here in the Philippines and if you really want to push that kind of mindset, like when you go to Jollibee, for example, and you're gonna speak in English, or when you go to a sari-sari store and speak in English, you won't really receive a response that's in English because it's not a rule here in the Philippines that you should speak in English. It's just uh, Filipinos think that English is something that will help you like financially, that will make you successful. But it's really important because you won't be able to communicate with others. How will you be able to communicate with a janitor or with a businessman who owns his own Filipino store, right? If you speak in English. So I hope that the new generation will give thought to this and try to
Mm,
understand the language of the country they are living in now.
Uh, that is very very well said. I also believe that there's nothing bad about speaking in English. And yes, yeah, you have a point. Anyways, on to
Yeah,
the
I
next
mean,
one.
I don't
Uh,
think that speaking in English is bad, but like loving English first before your own language, I think that's something that you should really think about.
yes. No. No, in relation to this, do you think that having a national language is key to improving the country? And and if you do think so, how does it in what way does it help in improving our country?
Okay, so first of all, when I was in elementary and high school, I attended a private school wherein we were required to speak in English. And from that, I can see that there is a discrimination between Filipinos who can speak English and to those who cannot speak English. So those Filipinos who speak English, they tend to think higher of themselves to other Filipinos that do not know how to speak English because we take pride in being well spoken English speakers, right? Like we take pride in that. We say that to other countries that the Philippines is great because we speak great English here. But not really everyone has access to learning the English language, and therefore that leads to discrimination. Also, I want to stress that, for example, in Japan, Japan is one of the great countries here in the world, and you can see that they don't really speak English fluently. They speak their own language, which is Japanese, but you can see that their country is really developed. So if they can develop their own country by only speaking their own national language, then I think we can also do that if we consider the Philippines to have our own national language, and if we reinforce that in schools, I think we will have more communication and more relationships that can be built. So that would also lead to less discrimination and also more understanding between one another. And that would lead to the improvement of our country.
Yeah, yeah, yes, but in relation to that also, does that mean that we should abandon the English language altogether?
No, I don't think we should abandon the English language. What I want is that schools also give importance to the Filipino language. Because what happens now, for example, in the private school that I attended, is that English is in a higher tier. Okay, it's like in a higher tier. They consider English more important than Filipino. They always stress to us that English is the key to global improvement or success. But they don't really say that you should always speak in Filipino when you're here in class or when you're outside in the real world because we are Filipinos. We have a rule actually that English should always be spoken, and you can only use the Filipino language when you're in Filipino class or in Araling Panlipunan class. And I don't think that's a good rule because it's like they are containing the Filipino language. Like they are more of like if you speak Filipino then you have a violation. I don't get that rule and I don't want that rule to happen here in the Philippines that if somebody hears you speak in Filipino you'll get mocked. I don't think that's really nice because that is our national language. What's wrong with speaking our national language? But
It's true.
also we shouldn't discriminate English speakers as well. The only bad side that I see there are those English speakers who look down on non-English speakers.
Mm. So, so um, so if we were to if we were to start really studying our national language now, what do you think will be the future of our language?
Of course, our language will be rich. I mean, not in terms of money, but rather in our tradition. We will see more of how Filipinos built their nation solely using the Filipino language. But
Mm.
that will be really a hard task because nowadays even businessmen they require you to speak in English. So if you want to penetrate our citizens here into speaking Filipino, it would really start with the new generation, with the younger generation, because they are the ones who will inherit the country that we have now, right? People
Yes.
get old and they will be the ones who will become future doctors, future businessmen, future leaders. And if we instill to them the importance or if we stress to them the importance of the Filipino language and they understood it perfectly, then they will be able to pass it down to other generations.
Mm.
And once that everyone learns about the importance of the Filipino language, then that is the only time we can say that our Filipino language will be richer. Okay, it will become richer. And also, we add some words in our Filipino language. Filipino really is an evolving language. So if they try to use always Filipino language, then they will also be able to contribute more to the Filipino language.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and it's a really good thing that we are now really starting to improve in the way we speak, in the way we use our language. Eh, but in but in turn but in turn our English has also turned stagnant. Is there a possibility that that in the do you think that there is a possibility that in the future English might fall out of use here in our country if this continues?
Rather than fall out, I would say that if we prioritize more on Filipino, maybe Filipinos will only know basic English because it's hard that we are taught in school to master both Filipino and English at the same time. So, if we try to focus on Filipino, of course that will take a toll on the English understanding of the youth. But I think that's okay because we only really use English in order to communicate with foreigners. Since the Philippines is a tourist spot, then we should learn how to speak in English in order to communicate with them. But um, I think I think that's okay. That's the price to pay if we want to make Filipino a richer language, a more
Mm,
used language. I think that's okay if we're not really fluent in English, but I think that there we will just really have basic knowledge in it.
mm, that's a yeah, yes, it's quite a good answer. So I believe we have answered pretty much everything. I am running out of questions once again. Once again, thank you for lending your time for this little interview, and to our viewers, I hope that you have learned something from this little but very informative interview, and I hope that starting now we all really uh, we all really start studying and improving our language. But we must also not forget that English is also that studying English and improving English is also very important. But I believe that if we only make changes in terms of this, we may be able to see a better future for our country. Once again, thank you very much, Miss Marichelle Basilio, for lending your time here. For, and yeah, and yeah, yes, and thank you very much to the viewers also for watching this. And yeah, we will see you all next time. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me, Jazz.
Thank you.
I had fun answering the questions.
Thank you very much, and I had fun asking them as well. Thank thank you, thank you very much.